Welcome to the Enchanted Earth Podcast, where you will hear stories of nature with the power to transform our lives. These sacred stories are begging to be shared now. So listen in as my guest today shares one of their own. So welcome, everybody. Today we have with us Moriah Beth Freeman. Let me tell you a little bit about Moriah. She's a seasoned personal and spiritual development energy practitioner and teacher. And she published her first book, Labyrinth, My Journey to Belonging, in 2022. So welcome, Moriah.
Thank you.
I met you through another friend that we share, Gabrielle Anya-Raffello, who was on this podcast a few months ago and was such a delight to have. And I reached out to you because I just knew you had some beautiful stories that you'd love to share with us today. But first, I would like to ask you a little bit about your childhood as it relates to nature. Like, what was the land that raised you?
Not a lot of nature involved, really. So I was born and brought up in a place called Watford, which is north of London. So you can hear my Watford accent coming out then, actually. It's really funny. And it was a large town on the edge of London. So, we used to go to the park once or twice a week. The main thing really was my dad was a great gardener, and we grew up in the same house. We were there for all of our childhood and way into my parents' 60s probably. And he had this garden that I remember practicing dancing in. So I remember when I was studying dancing between 8 and 14, it was a very long garden, so I could practice the whole sequence in the garden on the grass. But I remember these magical stepping stones, kind of concrete stepping stones up towards the pond. And I remember clambering over the pond and just finding that a really magical space. Like, I just remember something to do with fairies, but I don't know where I would have got that from other than maybe fairy tales. So my mum read a lot to me and I read a lot as a child. I was a really big introvert and I loved spending my time with books. And that was the childhood, really. It wasn't until, it was when I made my choices for university that I decided that I'd enjoyed the field trip so much from the geography aspect of it that I wanted to at least bring geography or geomorphology, the study of landforms. So that's what half of my university degree was study of landform.
Oh my gosh.
I can't remember a thing of it now. It's all the science of it and that. But interestingly, we're just moving from Cornwall to Dorset to the Jurassic coast, which is one of the areas I studied as an undergraduate. So maybe I'll bring back some of that memory, or maybe I won't. It's a long time ago now.
Okay, so I know where Cornwall is. Obviously, the very western tip that reaches out with like Penzance, famous down there. And Dorset, is that like where the limestone cliffs are?
Yes, so it's where all the fossils are, basically.
Oh, cool. And how about that horse that's carved in the chalk?
It is actually. So it's not where we're going. We're going mostly west Dorset, but we'll be an hour from Glastonbury and an hour. Yeah, we'll be in a really good place in terms of land.
Beautiful, beautiful. So your experience of the garden as a child, it lights me up. Even when we have these little spaces, as a child, those little spaces can be like magnified, right? We feel like we're in a different world. And I could just imagine you as a child skipping through and dancing through this garden and going up. It was almost like this mountain with the pond on top. It just, it lights me up. Hearing about that, it is so.
It was, and I used to make up little tales in my head because my dad had, sounds very corny now, but gnomes, not the plastic ones that people have now. Don't know whether you have them in the US, but in the UK it's a big thing. But they were, I suppose they would have been, I don't know, some kind of pottery gnome with ceramic, maybe with painting. And one of them was fishing. I can't remember what the other ones were doing, but they looked a little bit like seven dwarfs from Snow White. But I think there were maybe three of them. But I remember making up stories about these gnomes and stories about the princesses and the fairies. And I mean, the only thing I didn't like was there were frogs in that pond. They used to scare me because they'd jump out while I was actually on the rockery.
Oh, that's sweet. And in your, your recollection of feeling the fairies around or, conjuring them, imagining them. I mean, really, that is something that is so much more accessible to us typically as a child is to really kind of settle into this non-3D physical reality, but just kind of being in our imagination. And that's something that so many of us lose as we become adults. And thankfully, some of us come back around too. Right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had an awakening in 99, but before that I was in the corporate world. But I remember coming back to the garden. As soon as I got back from work, I would change my clothes and go and garden for hours until it grew dark. And somehow that cleaned me, that I felt free of the toxicity of the corporate environment and all the frustration and the energies I'd picked up, which I didn't realize I was doing at the time. But I just knew that I needed to be in the garden and feel better as a result of it. So that was kind of, looking back on it, that was important because I created 2 gardens before my children were born. And then in 99, had an awakening and just knew I wanted to be closer to the sea. So as life had it, magically, we did move pretty quickly closer to the sea, but we moved to a house that was surrounded by the South Downs, the hills in Sussex. And that's when I reconnected with the fairy kingdom. And that's when my sons reconnected with nature as well, because I really had this strong desire that they could grow up around nature. Because at the time we were spending a lot of time in a car just to get from our house to a town or our house to the school. And we were so far removed from nature. I didn't want to have to get in a car to experience it. And so we moved, actually, the house we eventually moved into had horses and sheep and cows at the bottom of the close. And they would go and search for dragonflies. And one of them became a bird watcher, and it was just lovely. They could go and kick a ball in a field and run around in a way that I couldn't have done at that age.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So when you mention this awakening, for some people, they may totally get what you're saying. But for others, they might be like, well, what does that feel like? What is that? What kind of experience is that like? So can you just share a little bit about your personal awakening experience?
If I can. I mean, it's a funny thing, awakenings, because you can't always quantify them. I'll try and quantify it. I was really happy in the corporate job that I was doing at the time. My sons were 5 and 2, and I'd managed to get a part-time job at the level that I was working at. So I was really happy, very balanced, the happiest I'd been for a long time at work anyway. So I wasn't really looking to move. But in August 99, on the day of was it full solar eclipse? Can't remember. I think it was a solar eclipse. So it was that experience that somehow changed things, changed me. The whole country went dark. All the light went. And I remember feeling it in my body. It's like, wow. And I remember being with one of the directors of the company at the time, and we both looked at each other. We were both women, looked at each other and went, people are in amazingly beautiful places experiencing this, and we're stuck in this office looking out of the window, but we can still feel it. And I think within 6 months, both of us had left the company, both of us doing completely different things. But the experience of it, I can still feel it in my body, how it changed me, how I felt changed by it. But basically, within seconds of that eclipse, my director was ringing me and having a go at me, basically, for something that wasn't my fault. And I just thought, you know what? I really don't need this. I really don't need this. This is ridiculous. It's all about her ego. I'm just not interested. I'm going to be going. And I waited and waited. And then I suddenly felt a call to learn Reiki. It come out of nowhere. I'd never thought. I'd never even had a healing session myself, but I felt this really strong calling to learn Reiki. So I found a Reiki master. And the day after the attunement, the first attunement, I resigned. And basically, it is difficult to quantify, but it was like the life that I'd been living in that corporate job was no longer, it held nothing for me anymore. And I felt a calling kind of almost from here, actually, from my heart, to be doing something else, to be looking in a different direction.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because these deep, profound shifts in our lives, it is hard to put words around it because it is a felt experience. But without putting it into words, it's hard for other people to understand and perhaps be vigilant when it occurs with them. Or perhaps it has occurred to them, and now you just putting words around it, they'll be like, yeah. And maybe they didn't follow. Maybe there was some fear for them to follow the next logical path, when you realize we're just these tiny specks on this tiny little planet. We have no control. And all of our lives, all we're doing is trying to control.
Yeah.
When there is a solar eclipse, you realize we have no control.
No, way bigger than anything that we could influence.
Wow, Moriah. I had no idea. In my, conversations with you in the past, I had no idea about this magical experience that you had with an eclipse. Do you, just kind of curious, I mean, we can cut this out, but just kind of curious if you know anything astrologically about that eclipse, like where it was in your birth chart?
No. I'd never even had an astrology reading at that point. I'd always had this fear. Was it a fear? A fear of anything like that? Of anything spiritual? But I always had a feeling and always believed that there was more to life than this. What I could see, I just had this knowing that there must be more that I could see and touch. And I'd always been intuitive, but hadn't realized it. And just before that happened, I'd also started to have this curiosity and fear, a great fear of callings as such. When people had a calling, I had this fear about it. And I think I did find a book about it before this all happened. And of course, since then, my life has just been a series of callings, some of which have been relatively easy to follow, and others have been really very challenging to follow for various reasons. But yeah.
So that book probably did give you a little framework, a little background, or a little...
Still scared me, Maureen.
Oh, I know, because I think when we think of callings, we kind of envision like dropping everything in the physical realm and just walking off, hiking out into the wilds and retreating into a cave or something. And, maybe we've had past lives doing that. Or maybe we've just been acclimated in our culture that following your calling is dangerous. Stepping off the tried and true path that's acceptable is going to bring danger to you, your life, your family. And
it's threatening. It feels like a threat sometimes.
it can feel
Can
like
be.
very threatening. So
Mm.
yes, but that is something we have to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. It was several years later that I studied numerology and soul contracts. And in my own spiritual karma in my birth chart, there is a particular number in that is about, can I follow my callings, and can I follow my intuition and spirit without hesitation? Because that had come in as a karmic aspect, a challenge aspect for me. So even then, that was kind of triggered. Because, sometimes I can feel really drawn to something and then I change my mind and back off. It's a kind of push-pull. So it was already there, set in my name, my numerology at the time. But there were lots of things and people who helped. So certain books helped, like the Celestine Prophecy had just come out. And that really helped. And I think Conversations with God helped as well. So it kind of gave me a bit of context.
Yes. And there is a fabulous book about our soul's calling, which maybe you read. It's called The Acorn Theory.
I haven't heard that well.
Yeah. So anyone watching this, if you want to be really opened up to that concept of having a calling and what that really means, I highly recommend the book. James Hillman, The Acorn Theory, fabulous. So there's a lot of similarities. I can totally resonate with your experience of awakening. I was also in a corporate job. I felt that calling very strongly too. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew it was going to do with spirituality. And yes, I understand this, again, reluctance to things like astrology. I had that with tarot. So is there another story you would like to share that was kind of a little bit of a turning point for you?
I think I was opening up more and more. I was opening up to my intuition. I was working as a life coach at the same time as teaching Reiki. I trained in all sorts of vibrational therapies like color and other modalities. And there were a number of things really. So I remember one time when I was lying in the garden. So again, it was a garden. It was a circular lawn that we inherited with this house. And I remember lying on the garden one lunchtime in the summer at some point, probably before a school run. And I remember just feeling and specifically seeing the earth breathing, like literally rising and falling, like as a breath would. And just, I don't know, sometimes with these things, there are no words. You look at it and you think, am I really seeing that? Am I really feeling it? Because I'm kind of feeling it through my body, and I'm also seeing this rising and falling of the grass. And just putting my hands on the grass and just letting that experience ride through me. I certainly remember that very vividly. And every now and again, if I'm in the right, I suppose it's almost like a vibe. You have to be, it's like soft focus. When you look through soft focus, I think it's probably when you're really in your heart space and you're looking through soft focus, that's when I can see it more. But it's not that I see it regularly. It just happens sometimes. And I remember also just reconnecting with that elemental realm more. There were some woods near where we used to live that I would walk through and kind of really get solace from the trees, although I didn't communicate with them as such through the mind or words. I could feel their presence around me. And the same thing has happened in Cornwall. So there's a particular woodland stretch that we walk along a river with the dogs. And there's a particular point where all of us, including the dogs now, stop. And and I start talking to the elementals and having conversations. Now, I don't necessarily hear a great deal back, but what I do know is that by walking through that particular glade and then coming out again, I feel different. It's like a portal of healing, vivid green elemental energy that's really beautiful, full of ferns and trees, and just really beautiful.
Yes, yes. And I think that's a beautiful description that will help some people understand when they're walking in nature and there's just a place that they pause, because we're picking up something that is so subtle and so sweet and, like you said, nourishing for us. Can you describe one of these experiences by closing your eyes? Maybe the experience of laying on the grass and feeling the earth breathing, or this other elemental experience in your best words.
It's almost like if at the beginning of the experience, it's kind of my energy is up. It's like my energy just goes into my body. Like something drops, or I drop into a different space within me. And I've been working a lot with the frequency of love and dropping into it and invoking the frequency of love, the energy of love. And that's what it feels to me, is this, the nature kingdom is in that vibration. It's already there as a reality. So by walking into and through it, you're connecting with that. Not quite sure what else to call it. It's that vibrant green energy. So that color there, that color, the fern, is pure heart energy in my experience of it. And I think as well, whenever I go into ancient woodland, and I guess we're very lucky here in the UK that there's a lot of it still in the countryside, it's been untouched. I notice when I go through other places, like when we have city break holidays, or as lovely as those places are, my husband and I both want to come away and come back to nature, because it's in those places that still hold the magic, is the way we describe it, that we want to be, we want to spend our time. So don't you think hear the dogs? They're obviously agreeing. It's the barking.
No, I didn't. Oh, that's great. I love that. Synchronicity.
But also, before I came to Cornwall, I was on the south coast and living by this really beautiful beach, not on the beach, but a close walk. And it was a sand spit, so it went out quite a long way. And it wasn't tidal, so you could walk around the sand spit, which I did every single day in the morning before I started work. And that was magical in a different way. So it would have the same effect as really clearing and cleaning my energy field as I walked around it. If I felt a bit blurry or confused or emotional in the mornings, that's how I would clear it. And that became a really important ritual, daily ritual, when I was writing my book. So I would walk the labyrinth and then I would go home and write. But ideas would be dropping into my head as I was walking. Really clear ideas, like crystal clear. I've not had it since quite as clear as that. So I would know exactly what I needed to write when I'd finished the walk. And that aspect was like expansion for me, because it was clear space, wide open sea. There was sand dunes, so you were up high, so you could see much further. Down here, the walk I described is kind of very inward. It's inward focusing and very green. So trees that come overhead. So it's a very different experience of nature and the impact those natural spaces have on me personally anyway.
Yes, those wide open spaces that feel so expansive, I think are so, well, we need both, right? We need to feel that embrace and we need to feel that expansion. And it all depends on what we're feeling at the moment, I think. But it is just a simple practice of going out into nature wherever we feel inspired to go. That's where we need to go, right?
That's where we need to go. And it might change over time. You know, that's what I found. It changes over time. So my heart was hankering for the sand spit
Yes.
after landing in Cornwall, until I adapted and let go of that and then embraced the way the nature was here. And I also think there is something very different about the rock formation that you live on. And now this is coming back to my geomorphology days. So I'd only ever lived, I realised, on chalk landscapes. And then when I got to Cornwall, I was now living on a granite landscape. And that had a huge impact on my energy levels, massive. I just slept. I slept for months. Just really, really solid sleep. I used to get sleepy during the day. I'd go for naps in the afternoon. Everything slowed down. And it struck me that the culture in Cornwall, lots of people come here for holidays to slow down. But actually the people here, there's a lot of kind of a manana kind of vibe here. It's like, no, we're slowing down. But the granite does have that kind of, it's much denser.
Yeah.
Energy moves much more slowly, I think, through granite than it does through other rock forms. That's my interpretation. I mean, my training was much more scientific than that, but I can't remember any of my training, to be fair. So long ago.
I love that background in the rock because that is something that I am just fascinated with as well. And the land we live on and thinking about it in terms of our energy fields and how that impacts us, because it does.
Absolutely. I remember the last house we had before the awakening I had, again, was north of London in Hertford, and it was a new house on a brand new housing estate. And I think one of the most shocking things that I hadn't taken into account when we moved there was that there was no nature. So although they had landscaped and planted some new trees in, there were no birds for years. No birds. Can you imagine no bird song? I'd never experienced that before. There's no bird song. It took years. I mean, we were there for 5 years before we left and went down to the coast, but just very bizarre not hearing a single bird. And I'm guessing, quite a lot of the natural wildlife had fled because the entire site had been grounded and, a couple of hundred houses probably put on that site with no park, nothing, just houses. Very nice houses, but houses nonetheless.
We have a lot of that here in the United States. There's these, just level the land, put up all these mega McMansion houses. Everything is landscaped to the hilt. And you cannot deviate from the land. They have all these rules and you can't do this, you can't do it. And they're gated communities too. And those areas are so devoid of life. They're flat. They're just...
It's a funny one, isn't it? We're very lucky. If I look out the window, I can see the nearest city, which is Plymouth. But between that and us are trees and a river and the sea that I can see as well. And this week we went over to Bodmin Moor. So we're close to 3 different moors, really, where we live, kind of, which are totally wild, completely protected places where sheep and horses run wild. And so the fauna and the flora is completely untouched for hundreds of years. And one of the beautiful things that's happened over here recently, this year in March, they opened a labyrinth walk that's been created from natural stone, and all of the natural fauna and flora from Cornwall has come in and been designed near a lake, which apparently is where King Arthur pulled his sword out.
Pulled it out.
Yeah, pulled it out. So that's about 30 minutes from here. So there's a lot of Cornish folklore and English folklore as well down here, and magic around. But this particular labyrinth is such a gift because we go there quite often. We were there on Monday at the equinox and walked it pretty much on our own. There was nobody there. But it's right by the lake. It's got all of the Cornish stone and the fauna and the flora. And then you experience the walking of the labyrinth in this beautiful environment. And that's what's happening in pockets around the country now. So, we see quite a lot of the bad news going on over here, but also there is a lot of very good news and lots of reclamation projects that are coming through that just don't get the publicity that they deserve, which is a shame.
Yes. I agree. We have to make the good news needs to be broadcast more to people. You've mentioned labyrinths several times, and of course your book is called Labyrinth.
Mhm.
So can you just share about labyrinths and how meaningful they are to you?
I can't remember how I came across them originally. It's been 20 years in my life that they've been prevalent. I think the earliest thing was spirals. I used to intuitively draw spirals continuously. And then I think a friend introduced me to walking a labyrinth. And then I started to find them in different places around London. And again, it's one of those feelings that you can rationalize, but actually walking it is transformational. So it's not a maze. A labyrinth is a single pathway that weaves its way around spiral. It kind of spirals in a particular way into the center and then spirals back out on the same pathway out, which isn't, I don't think, a very good description. But the thing is, for me, I think it's a real physical experience of balancing the right and brain hemisphere, of bringing us into greater wholeness. That walking into the labyrinth is withdrawing into ourselves, I think, and coming out is coming back out into the world. I haven't really found the words to describe it fully, and I think it's one of those things that is better to be experienced than to actually talk about personally. I'm sure more people are much more eloquent than I am with it. My sense is that it balances the right and the left hemisphere of the brain, the masculine and the feminine energy. I think it links with, going within ourselves for drawing our own strength and source of power and love, and then coming back out into the world. So that in and out movement. One of the intuitive messages I received recently was that everything in the labyrinth is coherent, which I think is true. It's a very well-balanced symbol. And that symbol has been around for thousands of years. So you find labyrinth symbols in the caves in southern France. I mean, they're in Egypt. They're all over the world. There's quite a lot of them in Cornwall. So there's quite a famous one near Tintagel that's in the actual rock, been carved into rock. And I think the consciousness of the labyrinth is on the rise. I'm aware of quite a lot of groups on Facebook, for example, that talk about labyrinths and bring to awareness labyrinths, as well as in the US. There's quite a lot of labyrinths, I gather, in the US, in different places.
I do dowsing and earth energy work, and one of the things that I was taught was that labyrinths should be sited on a blind spring, which is basically water coming up from the ground, but being capped by a impenetrable layer of rock, so it spills out. So it would be a natural spring, but it's kept, and then water splays out all over. And I think that's such a wonderful visualization for understanding how we're kind of balancing the earth and the cosmic energy when we're in a labyrinth. And that's what gives it such power, is this earth energy and connection. And I love the word coherence. Every time I'm hearing it lately, I go, yes, because I think, well, coherence talks about frequencies, right? And that it makes sense to us when frequencies are coherent. It is life affirming.
Yeah.
It is uplifting.
Yeah.
And we understand that when we listen to music so simply, right? When music is coherent, it just goes through our bodies like it's just like water. It's just beauty, and it lifts us up. And when frequencies are incoherent, the opposite, obviously.
Absolutely. Because the frequency matches and works with ours and brings us
Elevate.
the coherence. Yeah.
Right. So when we step into a labyrinth, it's not just the earth energy, but it's the energy of all the people that have come before us who have laid that pattern of coherence, of feeling coherent when they're in those spaces. So it just keeps increasing. It is a sacred site. So all other sacred sites do the same. They bring us back into coherence.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. As well as nature.
Right.
That's really what the Woodlands are doing. And
like you said, the elementals, when you go to a place and it's beautiful and you're just feeling this energy of wanting to stop and spend a little bit more time, you're connecting, you're recognizing that there's this coherence that is helping lift you up. And it is because of the activity of the nature spirits and elementals and the earth and the cosmos all working to
all of those things.
Yeah, all of it.
I remember when one of my sons was younger and used to love to fish. At the time, he was very active, very lively child, and he was almost labelled with ADHD, but we decided not to go ahead with any labelling. But I do remember whenever he would go and fish and be by the side of a lake, he would come back very different. He'd just come back extremely peaceful, very balanced, grounded, calm. Just one day sitting by the lake. And also what I learned was, at the time I was studying and I was a practitioner of something called resonance repatterning. And the founder of that talked a lot about coherence and frequency. And what I realized was that the more centered and coherent I was, the calmer the family was. And I came to realize, had a hypothesis, that the mother is the central energy holder of the family. And that if the parents or the mother is coherent within herself, there is a greater chance of the family being coherent as well. That seemed to stack up with bosses. So there were certain bosses, directors, who would send me people in their team, and they nearly always had the same issues. But if I cleared the issues and worked with the people in the team, they would all be okay. But I came to realize actually it was the boss that was it wasn't just her behavior, but it was her erratic energy that was unsettling people in their energetic, the field of that team. Yeah, the mother can also be the principal energy.
As an adult or just anybody, the greater the coherence we are in, the more we can impact others in a positive way, right? It's just such a simple idea that we have to come back to, that our work is to do our own inner work so that we
Absolutely.
be in balance.
Yeah.
And it is not a one and done, right? It's a daily, minute by minute
Mhm.
discipline.
It is. It is. And learning some techniques and modalities, I think, is really helpful for everybody. Just some really basic ones that can actually work magic. So it's a really good practice. Yeah.
Wow, we got into a lot of different topics that I had no idea. I just love the discussion in so many different avenues. Is there anything else you would like to share before we wrap up, or anything for this audience that you'd like them to know?
I think it's just saying that if you can find some untouched nature, that's the best place to be. From my experience, to regain calm and coherence and be more grounded. And if you can sit quietly, and some people might pray, some people might ask questions. I just simply ask for help. I wouldn't say I pray particularly, but quite often when I go into that fairy glen I mentioned when we walk the dogs, I'll just stop at the entrance of it and thank the energy for being there, because it's been there for generations and just is beautiful, and thank them for their beauty and their presence, and ask them for help. So quite often I'll ask them for help, either for friends or family or myself, or if I'm feeling wobbly, ask for some healing for my heart. Or recently when we were selling the house, I asked them for some help with that, as well as asking for the spirit of the house as well to help. So, you can just talk out loud or think in your head and then see what happens, because, it'll work differently for different people, I think.
Yes, and it's asking, going with an intention, and then being aware of the response can come in so many different ways, right?
True. That is true. And just simply find something that works for you, because, some of my friends wild swim and that is their thing. And you're just finding your thing, whatever that might be. And your thing might change over time. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Moriah.
No, thank you. It's always lovely to connect with you.
And it was really interesting. I just realized now that we did have a solar eclipse just this past weekend. So we're filming this in September, even though it will probably air in October, November. But so it's just really interesting that story of the eclipse came up, because you and I have been trying to get together for months. So it was
the best part of the whole year, I think.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing such beautiful stories that I know are going to inspire others.
Oh, thank you, Maureen. And sending lots of love to you and everyone listening or watching.
Yes, anyone who's watching, please like, share, and comment. I would love to hear what this has brought up for you. I will respond to your comments. So thank you, everyone, for being on here and having an enchanted day.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of the Enchanted Earth Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so that you'll know when we publish another inspiring episode. Check out my book, The Enchanted Earth, available wherever online books are sold. Thank you and have a magical day.